dead man.
Can't get anywhere in 5 o'clock traffic.
We just recently moved down to the Circle C area, and so I'm thinking probably about an hour to an hour and a half.
I live in Round Rock, and it takes me an hour to get here almost.
Live from the campus of Huston-Tillotson University, you're watching a KXAN News special presentation, ATXpansion.
Hello and welcome back to this live special presentation of ATXpansion live here on the campus of Huston-Tillotson University in East Austin. We are talking about growth and the issue of traffic and how we will manage it, not just now, but in the years to come. We have a panel of experts on the stage with us tonight, some of the biggest decision makers in Central Texas transportation. They've been answering questions from our audience and from us and from some folks in our live chat going on right now at KXAN.com.
Indeed, we're hearing from Samantha tonight. She has a question about urban rail. Will the new urban rail stops result in increased development at each stop, and will it change the way Austin looks, John?
Absolutely. If you look at the implementation of rail in an urban setting anywhere across the United States, that is one of the primary things that it instigates is a more compact, walkable form of development, which in my mind is one of the big advantages, in addition to improving mobility, is the fact that we cannot continue to grow as a region by sprawling outward. It's not an option. We eat up too much land, and basically one of the big issues that we're facing with respect to funding our transportation infrastructure is that we can't afford to support the infrastructure that's required to allow people to travel long distances from suburban sprawl. So what rail does is allow people, because it's a limited access system, so the one spot where a train stops and people get on and off, the value of that real estate becomes very high, so there's a huge incentive to develop it in a way where you maximize that, which is growing higher with a lot of mixture and uses. So in my mind, that's one of the biggest advantages of urban rail, is that it does that. And again, every city around the country, around the world, honestly, but in the United States that's implemented has seen that happen.
Mike Martinez, there are critics out there that say, you know, it's a lot of money, $1.2 billion in this initial phase, apparently, and they're saying it's too much money for not enough people using it.
Well, and $1.2 billion is actually the total build-out. Phase 1 won't be that high of a price tag, but it isn't cheap. I'm not trying to minimize that. But what John was saying really plays right into Ms. Beeman's question. When we start building town centers around transit hubs, people can truly live and work and play in that same area without even having to own a car. So it really will have an impact on mobility impaired and seniors in our community, and as well as anyone else who wants to live in that type of environment. But you're right, Robert, we've got to pay for this somehow, and we are gearing up to ask our citizens to consider a bond initiative that would help us pay for the initial phase. It's not going to go everywhere, and it's not going to be the solution, but it is one component. You have to have bus, you have to have bike trails, you have to have roadways, as well as rail. And so we truly believe, I truly believe, that it's going to take a multimodal system in Austin to get us to where we need to go. You can't, we really can't afford the right-of-way out to Oak Hill to put a rail line going out there. It's really even much more expensive. But we can find other transit options like bus rapid transit, and we can improve the Y in Oak Hill as we've committed to doing. So it's going to take a comprehensive approach, but it isn't going to be cheap.
But we've been talking about urban rail and trying to get it across to people for years. How do you sell it this year, next year, this time around? How do you get people to get out of their cars, basically?
And you know, I really don't want to tee it up as if we're trying to sell it. Either folks understand it and get it and know that this is how our community has to evolve, or we don't. And we keep sitting in traffic and staying in gridlock. What we have to do, though, is be able to answer those tough questions. How are we going to pay for it? Who's going to operate it? Where is it going to go? What lanes is the rail line going to take up? Those are the types of questions that we have to answer and present to our community, and ultimately it's up to them.
And Heather McKissick, you and your group have been very instrumental in addressing these sorts of issues that face Austin?
Well, I think that what we have seen at Leadership Austin is that the leaders that are most successful creating long-term community change are not looking at issues through a single lens. What I'm impressed with about tonight in the conversation is what we are hearing is this is not a single issue problem. We're not just talking about traffic. We're talking about mobility. We're talking about access for seniors to education, to health care, to housing. So we see that leaders are most successful over the long haul, and a lot of these projects that are being discussed are long-term projects when they really look at the system as an integrated whole. And I'm encouraged by that conversation tonight.
Rob, tell us what Austin's rail would look like for people that don't really understand it. I know Mike kind of mentioned a little bit about it, but we're not going to look like Dallas, right? We won't look like others, but can you compare us to other transit systems out there?
Well, actually, here in Austin, we actually have rail operating right now and carrying something like 2,000 people a day between our northwestern suburbs and downtown. And so we've actually had some of the vehicles that we've been talking about in town. It may look very much like Dallas, the type vehicles. Light rail vehicles are moving towards low floor boarding so that they're easy for both elderly and people that have mobility impairments to get on. And so the vehicles we're talking about are very much the type vehicles that you see in Dallas or Salt Lake or Seattle right now, operating both in the street and on their own right-of-way. And so the technology we're looking at can do all of that.
Linda Watson, while we're right next to you there, a lot of people are discussing the assets or the pros and cons of a streetcar system versus light rail. People are saying a streetcar system would simply be on the streets clogging up traffic and making things even worse. How do you respond to that sort of argument at Capital Metro?
Well, we've seen in cities across the country where rail can work in mixed traffic, like downtown areas, and we believe it can also work here. The goal is to find the right technology and the right routes for the service to make sure that it can be successful in that context.